Third time's a charm, right? We just took delivery of our third camshaft for the L92 build, L9H. This camshaft is Cammotion. It's a stage 3 LS7 cam. It offers comparable lift that to the sloppy stage 2 or the Baldy Eagles cam that did not work, but it enjoys a much wider lobe separation, and I understand the intake valve opens a little bit later in this, which should give us what we need. The point where we're striking, where our intake valve is hitting the piston, is right at TDC. It's as soon as the exhaust valve closes, before the piston even comes down, the intake valve opens and it smacks the piston right there, just barely. This should give us a couple more degrees of play before the intake valve starts opening. And Cammotion says this cam should still build power up to clean up to 6,800 RPM, so this should be a really good contender if it does work. Before we put this in, we want to change our checker springs. We had our checker springs on cylinder number 1. We mocked up that head, and we hit the piston, and then we got a little mark on the piston on cylinder number 1. It's not deep or anything, but there's a mark present. Then when we put the Elegant Sloppy Stage 2 cam in, we put the head over on bank 2, which had the checker springs on cylinder 8, and we did the same thing there. So we have a very light mark on cylinders 1 and 8 pistons. So what we're going to do is we're going to move our checker springs over a cylinder so we'll be able to play with cylinders 3 and 6 instead, just so that, you know, I just like having that visual. We're still going to use our clay and measure our distances and stuff, but it'll be a nice confirmation when I put it on, roll around, take it off, and there's no mark on the piston. We've got a little bit of setup to do, and we got to get this cam in. All right, from where we are, it's really easy to get the cam out. First, we just roll the motor upside down. We don't have to pull out any of the lifters. We just need the motor upside down, so gravity's helping, not hurting. We're going to roll the engine a couple of times. We're going to line it up. Cast it dot to dot, just so the crank is at TDC. We need to remove our timing chain dampener. And we need to remove our 3 cam bolts. Remove our cam sprocket and timing chain. Remove our thrust plate. We'll grab a couple long 8mm by 1.25 bolts. I'm actually using rocker arm bolts for this. They only need to be in a couple threads, just to give you something to hold on to. And then we pull the cam. Nice and careful. It's a brand new camshaft. And that's our Elegant Sloppy Stage 2. Here's our markings on the back of the cam for anybody that wants to see it. Cammotion. Let me get some prelude. We're going to lube this up with some Permatex Ultra Slick. There we go. And we're going to stuff it in. Get in that hole. We want the dowel on the can clocked at, it's supposed to be clocked at 3 o'clock position, but because we're upside down, we got the dowel clocked at 9 o'clock. Now the thrust plate goes back on. I'm going to reapply some thread sealer to these bolts because they came with a Loctite on them with a thread sealer, and I've had them in and out 3 different times now from brand new. I always install a fresh thrust plate whenever I'm changing a cam. It's just a good thing to do. There's a gasket on the front side of it that seals the oil gallery, and over the time and heat cycles that gasket gets flat, and you can check it and make sure that the gasket isn't flat, but really the thrust plate is cheap enough. You just grab a fresh one and throw them on. It's a travesty as to how many times I've had this thing back apart since I put it together. These bolts don't get much torque at all. I think I run them down to 13, but I think the spec is set 11. And the chain goes back on with the cam. Line them up dot to dot. And before these bolts go in, it's very important they get cleaned up again. Okay, now, so consistent is this with cleaning up these 3 cam bolts that the one time that you forget to properly clean them and put Loctite will be the one time that they come apart on you. Every single time the bolts get cleaned, very clean, squeaky clean, and then they get a healthy amount of red Loctite. And personally, I love ARP cam bolts because they let you torque them down a little bit tighter and you can go to 25 foot-pounds. This is just a reliable failure point if you want to let it be. Then we'll put our dampener back on. I believe these bolts go to 18. Now we're ready to spin it back right side up, or at a 45 with the head side we're going to use flat. We're not going to be using this cylinder because of the mark on it. Let me show you guys the mark. It's really not bad, but it is there. There it is. That is the mark. It's not a big mark, but it's a mark. You see this? That's where our intake valve touched the piston, and it did the exact same thing on cylinder 8. And for my part, I just like the extra verification of knowing that I have no marks on my piston after I run this test. Even though, like I'm saying, I'm using the clay and stuff like that, and it'll show it. I just think it's a really nice, sweet extra step. So now we don't really care so much about cylinder 1 or cylinder 8. Now we're going to do all of our testing on cylinder 3. We've already moved our checker springs, so now we want a TDC cylinder 3. And even though we had all the room in the world on the exhaust valve, now that this is a new cam, we need to double check our clearance on the exhaust as well. You can use clay or you can use Play-Doh, it doesn't matter. All that matters is that whatever you're using doesn't stick to the valve, and it does stick to the piston. So we clean the piston really good, not just with parts cleaner. After I'm done cleaning it with parts cleaner, I also clean it with alcohol. And then we put our head on. I've learned something from doing this so many times. I've learned that I was checking two cylinders at a time. I was checking one with light checker springs and one with regular springs. And what I found was that the heavy springs of the regular springs make it kind of hard to feel the very light bind of a valve just barely touching the cylinder. When all I had was just rockers on the checker springs, I felt the motor try to stop as I was rolling it. When I had 4 rockers set up, the spring valve, the spring pressure alone made up what I would have felt. So I'm only going to do these 2 rockers, and that way I can feel if something touches. I think we have our winner. Oh man, am I happy with that. Oh yeah. Do the same on the exhaust. This is the head. This is the squish. This is where the valve was hitting. On the exhaust, let me do this in front of you guys. So on the exhaust, we have a whole lot of space. On the intake, this I'm pretty sure is where the head was flattened and squishing it out. And I think this is where the intake valve hits. And if we measure that, we have all the space in the world. If we measure the distance here, we still have we still have our 0.80, 0.78, 0.775. That's our 80th thou we need. So this is a winner. Going back together, I'll make sure that my push rod length is right at 7.375. And we've moved past this nightmare. This is like a euphoric moment for me. So we have our cam that we were gonna use. Big shout out to the guys at Camshaft. I called their tech support and I explained to them what I had and what the cam I was thinking about using, and the gentleman on the phone was very helpful. He made me feel very confident about the cam selection, and he looked some stuff up and he came back and he was right. With Texas Speed, I use a lot of their stuff and I have no problems with them, but when I called their tech support, they seemed like unsure about this. And this isn't too uncommon of a build, but the gentleman on the phone I spoke with them just said I wouldn't go any bigger, and I was trying to ask him back and forth between Bald Eagle's cam or stage 2 or stage 3 or a different cam, a BFD chopper I think, and the gentleman, like I'm saying, they just seemed kind of unsure about anything. But with Camshaft, they were quick. They corrected me. I was worried. I thought I just wanted a wider lobe separation, and they corrected me and said it's not just the lobe separation. You really care about your intake valve opening and when your IVO happens. And they assured me it would work, and sure enough, they were right. So I can't say enough good things about Camshaft. This sticker will be proudly displayed on my toolbox. This is the box the cam comes in. I know at the start of the video I showed a brown box, but that was just the packaging from the shipping. On their box is this awesome little emblem right here that we all love to see, made in America. And for anybody looking for it, This is the cam card. The cam card with cam motion is outrageous. We are very, very happy with these specs. And this is such an incredible cam card. This is a lot more information than what you get on some of your other cam cards. All right. From here, we gotta get the heads on. I gotta take my checker springs off, put the double springs that are from TSP with 660 lift. I gotta put those back on, and then we're probably gonna get some fresh color on the block, clean it up, make it look like good money, like new money going back together. And then we got some adapter plates to run so that we can still rerun the LS7 intake. And we're gonna hook up our dry sump oiling system to this. This engine should come out really nice once it's all together and tuned up. This cam is supposed to pull all the way to 6,800. And this should be an impressive build. I was really worried that we were going to end up with a stage 2 or stage 1 or a low lift cam. I was actually having nightmares about not being able to find a camshaft for this, and I was scared we were going to have to go and find like a 5.3 liter, like a 450 lift cam, like a 1-bolt or something, and set that up to make that work in this thing. It was getting bad, man. 3 tries of a cam before we got one that works. All right, so it's time to start getting this motor buttoned back up, and on our way to getting it back in the Z06.